Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Truth by Essence, where we talk about everything truth, healing, and growth. My name is Jane.
My name is Rye.
And we will be diving into a pretty intimidating topic for some people, and that is confrontation. So whether you are in a relationship or friendships, there's always going to be things that happen where you feel like something rubbed you the wrong way or you felt hurt. And these are conversations that we do want to have within these relationships to either heal them or just trying to get to the root of the problem and figuring out if this is a relationship we want to continue to grow and to work on, or if this is something that we want to end. So this has happened in almost every single relationship. But the first thing to note that's really important is thinking about what our intentions are in the confrontation. So are we intending to end the friendship or the relationship? Do we want to enrich the relationship and heal from it? Or do we just want to make the other person feel bad? Being aware of these intentions and acknowledging it without judgment will help you get a clear understanding of what your goals are from the conversation that you're about to have.
Yes, and the next way to communicate in a healthy way during a confrontation is just having transparency, just being genuine with your feelings. Obviously, something hurt you, what that person said, and you just want to tell them why it hurt you. You want to maybe heal that friendship and just be honest, basically with your thoughts and feelings, because you're important and your feelings are valid.
Right. And it's also about taking ownership about your feelings. Like, you never have to validate those feelings. If something happened to you and it affected you, you don't have to prove that to anyone else. And I think a lot of issues that happen within confrontation is that we're trying to prove a point, but in a defensive way, or in a way where we put blame on the other person. And so just being transparent and honest about your feelings, you're able to take ownership of them and then have a healthier conversation based on that. Another topic that is so important to keep in mind is just the timing. When are we bringing up these conversations? These are really delicate times within your friendships when you are dealing with confrontation, right? So we don't want to be bringing things up in the middle of an argument. So for example, if me and Rye are fighting and she says, I was really hurt by X, Y, and Z, I'm not, or I shouldn't say, oh yeah, well, last week you did blah, 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 right? Because now the intention switched from trying to resolve that problem and heal in that relationship and turned more into, I'm trying to hurt you as a defense mechanism because I feel attacked. And that's not really the time where we want to bring up those feelings and those emotions, because we're not thinking in a clear way. We're kind of being fueled by all of these anger or stress emotions, and we're not communicating in an authentic way or even sending the message that we want to send. Another thing is, try not to bring up confrontation when someone is in obvious emotional distress. They are not going to be thinking with a level head. So it's also not fair to you and to them to put them in that situation and to put you yourself in that situation, because that conversation is most likely going to do more harm if not both people are mentally okay in that moment. We also think about, is that person intoxicated? Okay. There are some times where confrontation may happen when people are taking substances or they're drinking or whatever the case may be. And those thoughts and those feelings, again, aren't super clear and aren't super genuine to how we feel overall in the relationship. So we just want to make sure that we are having these conversations in a healthy way and to reach a clear goal, whatever that goal is.
Yes, and timing goes into setting up a safe environment. As Jane said, like, her whole point about timing is respecting your own feelings, but also the other person's feelings. So when you're setting up a safe environment, you're trying to start that conversation in a calm and respectful manner. You're not trying to come at them. You're trying to get your point across, trying to be genuine about your feelings without making that other person feel uncomfortable. So also, when you're having a difficult conversation, it's helpful to be in a place where you're both comfortable at, like say in someone's room or in a mutual area where you know both of you guys will be safe and that you both can genuinely speak your feelings in that space.
Yeah, and an example of that would be, if I have an issue with Rye, I would tell her, hey, I really want to talk about something. This is really, really important to me. I just want you to know that I'm bringing this up because I really care about you. I really love you. I care about our relationship. And this is something that I want to fix, right? That kind of sets up the tone that it's not something that she needs to feel super worried about. She doesn't need to start getting defensive. She knows that we can get to the root of our humanity and be kind people to each other, even if we do have a disagreement on whatever the argument is. But it makes the environment safe to have that conversation in a healthy way. We're not starting off on the wrong foot. That could possibly really ruin our relationship or just put a huge damper on our relationship, right? Another thing is avoiding the you language. So people do this all of the time.
Yes.
It is just so natural that we use you language. So what does that look like, right? An example of that you should not do is when you did this, you hurt me and you were being insensitive. That makes the other person feel extremely attacked, where they're not even really listening and trying to solve that issue that this whole confrontation started from. Instead, they're like, well, how can I defend myself now?
Mm-hmm.
A different example that is so much better would be when this was said, I felt really hurt and that my feelings weren't being taken into consideration, right? So when you're saying when this was said, you can say when you told me blah, 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 or not, you don't even want to say when you told me, you want to try to stay away from you as much as you can. But when I heard blah, 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 I felt really hurt and I felt like my feelings were not being taken into consideration. So you're validating that for yourself, and you're also giving space and room for the other person, again, to be very like to intake what your message is there, and they don't feel like they have to kind of put a wall up and defend themselves in that.
Right. And I have this issue too where I had to learn to not use you in arguments because it's just so natural, like you said, to say you. And you take those baby steps when you, like you said, you could say like, when you said this, I felt, it's kind of like now shifting a little bit blame off of them, but really using those I statements is important, because you're really just, when you say it is perceived as an attack, and it's also invalidating your feelings without you knowing it, because now you're just putting this all on them and you might not reach a mutual understanding now because it is perceived as an attack. And it's just really important to this goes into validating each other's emotions and feelings and empathizing with them, because even if you do not agree with that person, you should at least try to validate each other's feelings, because it allows that other person to feel safe and acknowledged in that space. And it doesn't make you feel like you have to prove yourself and build a deeper connection, because you're just validating. Even if you don't see where that person is coming from, you can at least take that moment and be like, okay, I empathize with you. I may not understand where you're coming from. I may not understand maybe fully what I did wrong, but I can empathize what you feel like, and I can try to work on bettering myself in that situation.
Right. And another great thing is just giving them a space for them to speak their side. So after you already took your turn and said, I really care about you, I love you, I want to talk about this. When this was said, I felt really hurt and it made me feel like my feelings were not taken into consideration. And because I care about this relationship, I just wanted to let you know that, right? How do you feel about that? That gives them an opportunity to either say, wow, I really had no idea that made you feel that way. I'm so sorry. Or I said this because I really wanted you to understand this. I'm sorry if I didn't relay that message correctly, right? But you're able to understand each other's communication languages, the way that you speak, so that even when I say something and I mean one thing, I know now it's going to be interpreted a different way, right? And we can kind of tweak the way that we say things and the way that we communicate so that we don't have these issues in the future. But giving them that safe space to also talk to us, we're building that trust and we're building that foundation so that no matter what, in no judgment, both parties feel safe to just literally get to the root of their friendship, the genuineness of the friendship, If that other person truly didn't have the intention to harm you or to hurt you, this gives them a space to talk about that, and you can both grow from having that confrontation. Obviously, the first confrontation is going to be really, really difficult because you're kind of navigating those waters and you're not really sure how the other person is going to respond. But then again, these are great tips that you can always use. Again, setting up the environment to be a safe environment, that's already a change of scene for a lot of people and will set the tone for the way more conversations are going to happen, right? So after that, you both search for improvement. You came to a place where you both understand each other, you understand the issue, you understand how it was interpreted, the intentions behind it, you cleared the air. How can we work on that? Or what can I do better to not make you feel that way? How can you do better so that we can just make sure we're always going to be on that same wavelength?
Right. And basically, with that search of improvement, you're finding ways to grow with each other. Because this being said, though, because confrontation is scary, not all confrontations end the way you want them to end.
Yeah.
I'm basically like, I've been through a lot of confrontations and you got to psych yourself up for them, but sometimes they just don't, they're not able to come with the common ground, and that just happens. So not everyone's willing to grow, as we've talked in our previous podcast. And that's okay in certain situations. Obviously, if they're really hurting you, that's toxic. You kind of just got to move on. But if you really genuinely can't find that common ground and you just know, that's when it's kind of like, okay, our friendship has to be over. Like, there's no way you can continue on because you don't have that mutual respect for each other. If someone's not willing to sit there and listen and validate your feelings, then you kind of have to be honest with yourself and be like, maybe this is the last chance I give them. And that's hard to come to terms with that. And it's hard to do, especially if you hold grudges. I mean, I know I hold grudges, but there's a way where you can heal, you can grow from it, where you kind of accept it. You accept, like, I did what I had to do. I got my feelings out. I didn't hold on to them. I let that person know how I felt. And if they didn't receive that, that's not on me. That's on, not saying it's on them, but it's kind of like you cleared the air, kind of not on you anymore. And you got to just kind of part ways and move on.
Yeah. And sometimes in these, the reality of it is no two people are the exact same.
Yes.
People have different expectations for what whatever means to them, X, Y, and Z means to them, right? And so sometimes if you really care about that relationship and it's worth having, sometimes you have to make sacrifices, right? And you have to tweak the way that you communicate and the way that even you hold your relationships with other people, right? So it's meeting that person in a place where they need you to meet them so that you can have a healthier relationship, right? And sometimes that is your way of showing them, look, this is not natural for me, but I care about you and I love you and you're so much more important than that. I'm going to practice this for you. And that also builds a lot of trust, and builds a much deeper connection, because you know this person has done this for me and that was really difficult for them, but they love me that much to respect me, respect my boundaries, respect my feelings, and now we can be closer because of that, right? And just as Rai said, some people are not ready. Some people have not practiced these communication skills or are not open to practicing them. Right? So if this is the first time that you're having a confrontation with a friend, it's always about setting up that tone and what that's going to look like. But if they're not willing to meet you, there's really only so much that you can do. And again, we've talked about this before. Friends grow together and then we grow apart. And I feel that friends enter your life to teach you a really important lesson. And once you've learned that, sometimes they fulfill their purpose and it's time for you to continue on, and you both continue on your different paths, and that's totally okay. That is a decision that you're going to have to make, and that's an important one, and confrontation is going to reveal so much about that.
Yes, it does. Yeah. And confrontation is scary, like we keep saying, and it's not going to get easier. I know, like, even with all the steps we told you, it doesn't get exactly easier, but you can be assured that if you want to confront someone, you're at least being genuine and transparent about your feelings. Like I said, you clear the air. That's like so important. Like, you're not holding on to anything, because there's nothing worse than being in a friendship with someone, having all these I want to say grudges, but having all these burdens with them, and then kind of just ghosting each other and never speaking on it. And maybe you really love this friendship and now you lost it because you guys just didn't know how to communicate with each other, didn't know how to confront each other. There's just nothing worse than that feeling because of not knowing what happened and what went wrong. At least now with confrontation, you'll know, like Jane said, things were revealed. And you'll know what actually is maybe the root of the problem, hopefully, what the root of the problem is in that confrontation.
Yeah, and it takes practice.
Yes.
Like we said, it takes a lot of practice, and both parties need to have the same goal in mind, right?
Yes.
So for me and Rye, we have confrontations, of course. I think not like all the time, but
No.
we get confrontations every day, guys.
Yes.
But at first, I was really afraid of it.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
like, oh my gosh, I did something wrong.
Yeah.
Like I get so stressed out.
Yeah,
And I
Jane
think
would be like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so sorry. Like, what did I do? Like, I'm trying to think of what I did. And I'm like, girl, no, you're good. You're good.
but after a while, we just practice being open and transparent with each other. Now we can talk about anything. And even when one is upset at the other, we know we can talk about it and it's not going to affect our relationship. Like, I don't have to keep dwelling on that or thinking about that. We're human. We make mistakes, but we have that same goal in mind, that we care about the friendship and we want to work on that. And so we practice healthy communication.
Yes. And it's freeing because you're not,
Yeah.
like, again, you're not holding on to it. Like, if I get upset with Jane, I don't need to be like weeks later, well, I was upset with Jane like 3 weeks ago. Like, I just tell her in that moment, Jane, you really upset me. And then Jane's like, I'm sorry, like, I'll learn from it. And we have had these talks and you keep having these talks, but like, again, Jane and I understand that we like grow from it, that experience. Obviously, again, not everyone's gonna get that, but it is freeing. It's a freeing feeling where I'm like, I know with Jane at least, like, I don't need to worry about holding on to emotions. Like, I can confront her and it's not like she like maybe she wants to run away from it, but like she's there and she'll listen to me. So
yeah, and most of the time, if something's wrong, the other person can feel it, guys.
yes,
They can feel it.
The vibe's off.
Yeah, really, the vibe is off. There tends to be some distance that's created, and that causes a lot of stress in the relationship because now the other person is, well, I don't know if anything's wrong. Should I really bring something up? Does this person not trust me enough to bring this up? And it's also your call, you know, if it is for your mental health and you need to take a step back, that's also a huge important part of confrontation.
Yes.
If you know that you are not ready or, you know, emotionally and mentally stable to have that conversation, please take a moment for yourself, a week for yourself, however much time that you need, so that when you do come back, you're ready, you're prepared, and you're giving the right messages that you're intending to send, right? Nothing is harmful, nothing is harsh, nothing like that. So that, I hope all of our little tips help. So again, we're just going to recap very quickly everything we covered. We first talked about what our intentions are, understanding that, acknowledging them so that we have a clear goal of where we're trying to get within confrontation, right? Next thing is transparency, being honest, being genuine with your feelings, that you want to heal that friendship, whatever your intentions are, and setting those. Next is timing. Just be respectful of the other person. Never corner them, make them feel vulnerable, like they don't have a way out. Never make them feel unsafe, and keep that in mind. The next thing is setting up a safe environment, setting the tone that this is coming out of a place of love, out of care, out of genuineness, and that this whole conversation should be without judgment and without any harsh feelings. So yeah, setting up that safe environment. Next is avoiding the you language, right? We gave the example, when you did this, you hurt me, you were being insensitive. When instead we should probably say, when this was said, I felt really hurt and I felt like my feelings weren't being taken into consideration. That other person doesn't feel like they have to defend themselves. They don't feel attacked. You have created an open and comfortable channel. The next is giving them space to speak, giving them an opportunity, let them explain their side. Do they even know what they did wrong, right? Giving them that opportunity to just speak freely and comfortably. Next is validate each other and empathize with each other. That's a huge thing, finding that humanity in that other person. Even if you don't agree with their perspectives, you can agree that the other person has been affected the way that they've been affected. And just validating that, it builds so much trust and so much more of a deeper connection within that friendship. Last is search for improvement and come to an agreement. Now you have common ground. You understand where you're both coming from. You can say, how can we do better for each other? And practicing all of those, obviously, it's going to take a while to get it perfect. We are still not perfect.
Yes.
But it's also just having those same goals in mind, and having those intentions in mind.
Yeah. And let's close with, you are always valid. I know I always say that a lot, and if you know me in daily life, I say that all the time, but it's so true. But also, like, please give us a follow at truth.5.essence. So we'll be posting it there, and in the comments, just let us know if you like this podcast and what other topics you might want to hear from us. Yeah, thank you for listening to us today.
Hopefully it helped. We look forward to hearing from y'all. So
Yes.
have a good one.
Bye.
Peace out.